Hey guys, I want to talk for a moment about good and evil in Dungeons and Dragons, specifically within the Forgotten Realms setting. The Forgotten Realms is kind of the official setting for D&D these days, so it's really something people scrutinize, but they only kind of seem to really shallowly scrutinize it, like what's directly mentioned in just the monster manual or just the player's handbook or whatever. It's a really well fleshed out and developed setting. You can look stuff up online if you're specifically interested in one particular thing, and there's also literally over 170 books, like full-on books, just written in the Forgotten Realms that you could be getting all kinds of information from about anything you wanted. But I get that a lot of people don't have time reading, and there's also the lore YouTubers that can tell you all of these things too. The point is, all of the information on the Forgotten Realms is so incredibly readily available and so in depth that these misconceptions existing is just it's really bizarre to me. Again, I'm going to talk about literally good and evil for the Forgotten Realms because again, it's the default D&D setting. Now, I'm leading up to something else with this, but we need to start with good and evil. In the Forgotten Realms, good and evil are not what they are in real life. In real life, they are concepts, subjective notions that differ from person to person and culture to culture. Now, yeah, there are some things that are basically universal that we all agree are like wrong or evil or bad. Except not actually. That's only mostly true, not entirely true. See, like, we look on the Aztecs with horror because they sacrificed humans to their gods, and they would look on us with equal horror because we don't sacrifice people to prevent God from literally eating the planet, which is kind of why they did that. So yeah, that's not how good and evil work in the Forgotten Realms. They're not the product of countless people interacting with each other and forming cultures. They are intrinsic and fundamental forces of reality. What do I mean by that? Well, as far as we can tell, our real world is made up of four forces: electromagnetism, gravity, the strong nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force. The Forgotten Realms reality is made up of electromagnetism, gravity, the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, the weave, which is the force that regulates magic, and good, evil, law, and chaos. Yes, I do mean that in the Forgotten Realms, you could break out a purely mundane detector created without a drop of magic and measure with scientific precision how good or evil something is. The realms have a literal goodness boson. What's a boson? It's a type of subatomic particle. Okay, sure, maybe it's not literally a subatomic particle, but the fucking point I'm making here is that in this universe, alignment is not subjective. It's a literal, physical law of reality. Now, I'm not entirely sure if there's some big grand explanation why this is the case, aside from the conflict between the setting's creator gods, which I'm not going to get into other than to say that there were a few of these creator gods, they had a fight, and now there are four alignment forces which oppose one another, and those forces are real, genuine physical forces. If you want the full details on that, look up Mr. Rex's video on Asmodeus. Right, so we've established that good and evil, law and chaos are fundamental parts of the realm's physical laws. But what's that mean? Well, it means a lot since races don't evolve in the realms. Well, okay, sure. I'm certain that a few races did change over time from natural forces of survival of the fittest. But for the vast majority of all species, they did not emerge from primordial soup and obtain their form and function via tens of millions of years of natural selection. A god simply made them that way and put them down someplace in the world. Yes, I hear you fellow lore uber nerds. Some of the races were made by snake people, not gods. I know. Fun fact, not all the creator races were snake people. Also, they were in fact several races. But this is getting into the weeds. The point being, almost any race that you can point to in the Forgotten Realms is the product of intelligent design, not evolution, which is pretty important. See, mortal life has a purpose in the realms. In real life, we all search for a purpose, and hopefully we find one. A lot of us think that we have some innate purpose, but we really don't. We have to find or make our own purpose. That's the meaning of life, guys. I'm sorry you had to hear it from some angry nerd ranting about Dungeons and Dragons, but there it is. The point I'm making here is that races and mortal lives in the Forgotten Realms actually do have an intrinsic point, an intrinsic meaning. It has a purpose. And no, it's not some kind of horrible, grim, dark bullshit, but the purpose of mortal life in the Forgotten Realms is to be god food. I'm serious. This isn't 40K. It's fine. Listen, you, a mortal, have a soul. Some gods can make souls, but this fresh soul is like raw flour, technically edible, but not nutritious or tasty. So what to do? Well, you stick that soul in a vessel that'll cook it up into something that'll nourish you. Mortals are that vessel, and mortal actions, deeds, and experiences are both the cooking process and the extra ingredients that go into this loaf of soul bread that the god will later chow down on when the mortal dies and goes to their realm. Now, that doesn't hurt you, by the way, if you happen to be that mortal. Your conscience and mind will be fine, and you'll enjoy the little playpen that your god made for you, or hellish torture chamber that your god made for you if they're evil, because some gods can be evil. Now, why is that? Well, you see, gods in the realms are not like the gods of reality. Now, I don't mean offense to religious people here, but the realm's gods are not imaginary beings made to explain the workings of nature by people who didn't know what we know today, nor are they entities made to help control large populations by ensuring the propagation and sustainment of certain beliefs. Nor are they even extra powerful supernatural spirits that exist to shepherd and guide mortals down the right path. The realm's gods are consciousnesses which arose from primordial chaos and are literally the forces, objects, or concepts they hold the mantle of, and are capable of thought, actions, and decisions, opinions, and emotions. What do I mean? I mean that Joaquin, the goddess of commerce, is literally the very concept of commerce, an anthropomorphic personification of it. And thus, what commerce is and how it works is the way it is, not because of mortal actions, but by the will of Joaquin. If you killed Joaquin, which you could because the realm's gods can die, then the laws of supply, demand, and trade would break and stop working. Some other god would need to take her place, or that stuff could not happen, at least not in its current form, and certainly not with any grace or refinement. Do you think that's insane and absurd? Yes, it is. Welcome to fantasy. Don't believe that's the case in the realms? Well, we've never seen something like that happen to a god like Joaquin. Sure. In fact, none of the fundamental stuff like trade, the sea, mountains, earth, or mortals have died. But Mystara died. Twice, actually. Mystara and her previous alias, Mistral, were both killed. These are gods of magic, by the way. Mistral was killed by a mortal, Mystara by another god. See, a long time ago, this archmage named Karsus killed Mystara by casting a spell so powerful that it yoinked the god juice right out of her, and, he stole it. But in the nanosecond where he was yoinking that god juice, there was no god of magic, and so all magic stopped working. Floating cities crashed into the ground. People kept alive by magic dropped dead. Wizards couldn't cast spells for the most part. Many magical creatures just stopped frickin' existing. This was not the wrath of a god being attacked, by the way. This is just what happened when that god chose to die, so the fundamental underlying layer of reality that she was the anthropomorphic personification of would not be utterly destroyed. Fun fact, if you've ever wondered why D&D spells stop at 9th level, that's why. They used to go up to 12. The next goddess of magic, Mystara, they're technically the same person, they're also not, but they are. She, literally just decided to nerf magic so no one could ever cast Karsus' avatar again. Oh, and before you ask, the only reason we got another god of magic at all is probably a fluke. Blind frickin' luck. TLDR, some peasant girl doing magic at the time got splashed enough god juice when Mistral died to ascend to divinity, Mistral being Mystara's previous name. Anyways, Mystara herself later got ganked by Cyric, and the same thing happened, just a bit differently. The way the god dies matters what happens to stuff through the mind of. When Mystara died, magic became a plague that ravaged everything while also burning out entirely in some places, and Look, 4th edition D&D is a mess, okay? Bad writing galore. My point here is simple. D&D's gods are living beings, and they don't control the natural world. They are the natural world, to a degree. There's some overlaps on something, sure, and some gods are only very specific parts of nature, and some gods have many different mantles, but they're still all conscious minds that control reality at the fundamental level and make sure that everything is the way it is because it is their will to make it that way. So what's this mean for mortals? Well, mortals do have some measure of free will in the realms. It's not that much different from reality in that we cannot do things the laws of physics prohibit. It's just that for us, we can't kneel down at an altar and say, "Hail gravity full of grace, please let me ascend to space," and then have gravity itself hear us think about it and being like, "Sure, my dude," and give us the power of flight. But people in the realms can. Now, because gods are these personified concepts of nature and are made up of the universe itself, and in the realms, good, evil, law, and chaos are fundamental parts of reality, and mortals are the ovens for baking tasty god snacks, well, the reason religions are what they are in the realms is each god needs worship to survive and to grow their powers. If they can influence a mortal to do things that'll make them more in tune with the specific ratio of good, evil, law, and chaos the gods themselves happens to be, the more nutritious and powerful the god will be when that mortal gives them their soul. And yes, that is why demons and devils in the realms obsess over mortal souls and corrupting people to evil and chaos. Because demons and devils are similar, or maybe even the same, type of entity as the gods, and can also chow down on some soul food to get their buff on. Also, just fun fact, Asmodeus is the primordial creator, a god that set up this whole system, who's using souls to patch up his boo-boos from his bro, so he can one day get up and kick that bro's ass. But you didn't hear that from me. Now, if you're a planar creature of any kind, god, devil, lord of chaos, lord of order, the lady at the DMV, whatever, you want to be attuning souls to your wavelength and then integrating them into yourself to empower yourself so you can better fight for dominance amongst your peers. That's the whole god game here. Here's something that's not realm specific, but is a D&D thing related to what I'm about to get into here. And I need to make this abundantly clear. D&D uses the term race when talking about mortals. It really should not. That's not the concept going on here. Elves are not humans who live in some far-off place and just happen to be all hot and have pointed ears. Kobolds are not humans who happen to all share genetic deformity. These are not different races, these are different species. They are actually biologically distinct and different. And sure, we can get some half-breeds like half-elves and half-orcs, but that's less like your friend Roseanne, whose mom is Nubian and her dad is some guy from Brooklyn. It's not even like when a Jack Russell Terrier has kids with a black lab. It's like when a tiger and a lion decide to bone and you get a liger. Some species can reproduce, and no, that does not make them the same species. Two species are distinct, and their kids cannot produce offspring. If half-elves did not live in a world where nature could think and have opinions, they'd be sterile, just like our friends the ligers, mules, hinny, and Siamlian dolphin. And I probably mispronounced that. Latin names are hard. Anyways, that's the preamble done. That's what I need you to understand going into this little last bit here. Good and evil are parts of nature itself in the realms. Fundamental laws, not the consequence of mortal beliefs and actions. Gods are living minds within nature itself that dictate what the laws of physics are. Gods make mortals to shape their souls in a process equivalent to cooking for the purposes of sustaining themselves and growing more powerful. Race in D&D really means species and is talking about biology, not culture, and wizards should really stop using the word race like that. So what's got me pissy enough to make a video today? Well, I'm not usually that much into hanging out on D&D forums and threads, so I often get out of date and out of the loop on things. Anyways, let's take a look at this drow. Let's assume she's like 99.95% of her people and not part of the 0.5% they fail to violently and brutally purge. You're looking at someone whose very biology makes them feel depressed and empty if they don't have power and don't plot and scheme. You're looking at a person who has a literal demon-god hybrid with the mantle of Drow controlling every aspect of her life by all sorts of means, magical, supernatural, and mundane. The end result of which is her entire species are extensions of this literally provably evil being. This Drow here, she delights in enslaving other species, especially their males, whom she sees as not just inferior, but as actual vermin. She likes to torture for fun, and not the kinky kind of torture many people like. She's more into the making balloon animals from your intestines and laughing at you while keeping you both alive and conscious with magic type of torture. That's her whole jam. That's what she does on her weekends to, have fun before going out with her girlfriends to spit on poor people. She lives in a society which, no joke, sees a knife in the back as a natural cause of death. A society that makes laws which state if you kill an entire family, that's totally fine. Unless you get caught, in which case your entire extended family will be killed. Unless, of course, you killed the non-Drow family, because non-Drow don't have rights. You are looking upon someone who is genuinely, fundamentally evil. If she had been born with the capacity for good, it was either entirely crushed out of her when she was less than 4 years old, or she would have been killed by her own mother, who would then in turn be killed for raising a child wrong in Drow eyes. The thing is, that would be incredibly rare. That situation where she would be killed and her mother would then be killed, because this Drow, like almost all Drow, are literally puppets of a god turned demon. Her name is Loth. She's a huge frickin' problem, and even other demons think she's insane because she is. Now, yeah, there are some good Drow, a very, very tiny number. These Drow could literally not be good without the existence of a second god, Elestri, who wants nothing more than to remove Loth's influence from the Drow and restore the Drow to their old place in that slice of heaven the elves originally come from, which is a long story. Basically, elves are angels that got demoted to mortals because politics. Remember, the gods dictate everything about this slice of reality that they hold the key to, and Loth happens to have the Drow key. The Drow are exactly what she wants them to be, unless her sister interferes and allows a Drow the freedom to choose to be good. And even then, most Drow who get that choice choose to kill, burn, and be evil because of the non-magical influences that Loth places on Drow culture. Anyways, it seems that a ton of people look at this Drow here and go, "Oh my god, a racist depiction of a black person!" Ah!
The Drow are basically a collection of, let's say, problematic tropes used in fantasy, especially in the 70s and 80s. This is all a bit heavy, so for the sake of fun, we're gonna go through them with bingo. So, as you can see, we have a bunch of squares. In fact, pretending that the Drow are not affected, even unintentionally, by actual real-world racism is not very smart, considering that illustrations like these exist. It's not even just about them being dark-skinned elves, guys. The coding is very obvious. And if
What the fuck? You look at a subterranean monster that's little more than an extension of a demon's will, basically just a cell of that immeasurably evil being, a torturer, a murderer, and a slaver who would take delight in reducing your entire world to ash and making you nothing more than a torture pet until she's bored of you. Think that's an African American and scream that the game is being racist and not you? Fuck you. That is the single most racist thing I've ever heard of anyone thinking. The Drow don't even look African. You are literally looking at Caucasian features which happen to be tinted black, gray, or purple and go, "Black person!" This same thing happens to orcs, too. So many people have looked at Drow and orcs and screeched, "Black person!" that Wizards feels the need to make massive lore changes because racists are screeching, "This is racist!" When in order to even think that those are racist depictions of African Americans, you have to be racist. But the orcs are drawn like Huns. They're drawn like the fucking Huns. Have you ever seen an African person? Do orcs have frizzy hair? No, but some black people have. Some black people like to straighten their hair with chemicals or electric tools. Do you think that the orcs are universally doing this? No. Fuck no. The orcs of D&D are lifted right from Tolkien's books. Gary Gygax had documented notes on this. Well, then where did Tolkien get them? Tolkien got them from a random monster he liked in the book Beowulf. What's Beowulf? One of those books you didn't pay attention to in high school if they even taught it. So, who wrote Beowulf? Well, the ancient people who wrote Beowulf were drawing on these old Germanic storytelling traditions to tell a Scandinavian epic, and their depiction of what we now call orcs is literally just how the Romans saw and talked about the frickin' Huns. Don't believe me? Let me quote my old friend Ammonus Marcelius from 330 AD. The nation of the Huns surpasses all other barbarians in wildness of life. They are the portent of ugliness, and so crook-backed that you would take them for some sort of two-footed beasts, or for roughly chipped stakes which one sees used for the railings of a bridge. Though they do bear the likeness of men of a very ugly pattern, they are so uncivilized they make no use of fire, nor any kind of relish in the preparation of their food. Orcs, being terrifying, savage, barbaric raiders of the fringelands away from the hearts of civilization until a fuck ton of them get together to raid the capital city and are hideously ugly, barely thinking brutes, makes them a racial caricature of the Huns as they were seen by the Romans. Now, yeah, I say the Huns specifically, but I'm a history nerd. Most serious scholars say that Tolkien and Beowulf's depiction of orcs are more like the Mongolians, and fair enough, but, well, here's a picture of a Forgotten Realms orc next to a painting of Attila the Hun. I rest my fucking case. You still think that these are black people? That drow orcs are black people? Do you think that any non-human skin tone having group of dangerous killers equals black? Well, guess the fuck what? The Forgotten Realms has a depiction of African people. A big one. A pretty cool one. You might have heard of it. It's called a frickin' huge nation down over here. It's doing fantastic, actually. Real rich. Extremely prosperous. It's based on the old African kingdoms. You know, like the one, the super rich old dude from back in the Roman times with that guy who went around, like, literally giving away tons of gold to show how rich he was. It's based on that time period, those cultures. And that is how the Forgotten Realms depicts African people as one of the most successful people in the world, with their own nation, culture, ways, and a massive amount of political power, as well as being stupidly rich, not as terrifying monsters that creep out of wilderness caves to rape and murder your family. Fuck.